Good afternoon and welcome to our chapel. From the Webster Dictionary, materialism, a theory that physical matter is the only or fundamental reality and that all being and processes and phenomena can be explained as manifestations or results of matter. Are you a materialist in this brief description? Or is there something beyond the material that matters? Or perhaps there's a middle ground. There are things beyond the matter we can't see yet, but one day it will all be explained. I was talking to a massage therapist once who said she frequently has people start to cry on the massage table, and not from the pain of muscles and tendons being pushed around. She believed that emotions and experiences are stored in the muscles, and that working them out releases these emotions. The relationship to our physical bodies and emotional well being, our spiritual understanding, it seems to be all wrapped up together. Which brings us to the practice of yoga. I have a friend who wanted to speak about her yoga practice and how it is helping her to build inner capacity and improve her experience of these isolation times. We begin.
Yeah, and then we'll kind of take a pause and then
So
focus. Yeah, zoom
sounds
and
like
scene. Yeah, no.
Oscar, like zip the lip.
Okay,
I
the
said to
magic.
Oscar, I
Yeah.
have an interview this morning, so you know what that means. He goes, I gotta zip the lip. I said, that's right.
Zip the lip. Yeah.
Zip the
Okay,
lip.
we're leaving all this in then. Good afternoon and welcome to an interview. I've got a good friend, somebody who's been around for a long time in my life. Uh, I would say she's still my best friend. And that's a thing, but I'm glad they're happily married. And we had a chance to meet Eric Parker a while ago, and uh, uh, and here we have Courtney. Why don't you introduce yourself and let us know who you are, where you work, and what's up?
Sounds great. My name is Reverend Courtney Reedman-Parker, and I presently serve Messiah Lutheran Church in Winnipeg. And I am married to Reverend Eric Parker, who some of you will have met last week, interviewed by Sean Bell. And we have 2 children, and life is interesting right now, as it is for everybody.
Yeah. We were just talking a little bit about that before the interview, but the question I've been asking everybody to try and kind of let us get to know a little bit more about you is what would 18-year-old you think about the you of today? Growing up at Kamloops, Alberta, it's
Kamloops, BC.
yeah. Oh, BC, of course, yes. Man, I wish I could edit this. Anyway, yes,
Oh,
Kamloops, BC.
too bad. Yeah, so I grew up in Kamloops, BC, which is a small city nestled in the central interior, about 4 hours east of Vancouver. And 18-year-old me, I don't think could have imagined this life for myself. I certainly did not feel called to ordained ministry at 18. And I thought those who would suggest such an idea were crazy, or that the church was really hard up for pastors. I mean, maybe both were true at the same time. But I don't think I ever would have imagined living in Winnipeg or even being married or having the life that I have. Like, I just don't. I've been thinking about this question because I know that you asked it of my spouse earlier earlier in the week. And yeah, there is, I don't know that there's anything that I could have envisioned at 18 that is presently happening. There's just so much that has changed in my life and in myself since that time.
Yeah. So big transformation time and going along. And yeah. Well, here we are in COVID times. And the way my chapel services have kind of evolved is we're doing more. I wanted to talk about spiritual practices that people are doing. And I had a whiteboard and I have a book that I was researching. And we talked about journaling, poetry, meditation, creating beauty, and delighting in nature. And when I contacted you, you're like, once again, you were like, well, I don't think I do any of those. But we did think that meditation and yoga might have something to do. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about how you got into a yoga practice and maybe how that builds your capacity to be mom, clergy, pastor, all the hats you have to wear. So can you tell us a little bit about your yoga practice, how you got into it, and where it goes from there?
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I started running. And as a result of running, I needed to do more stretching, which I'm terrible at. I'm terrible at maintaining a checkbook, and I'm terrible at stretching after running. I just don't like to do it. I don't like to do it before. I don't like to do it after. And you pay the consequences for that, especially when you run long distances. So I was training for half marathon in 2009 and just realized that I needed to be doing more to help my body along. And so I wouldn't have called it a yoga practice then. But that's when, I guess if I look back, that's when I would have started practicing yoga in a more intentional sort of way. And from there, I started just at home. I bought a couple of DVDs that I found at Superstore, and I would play them in the morning, sort of at the start of the day. And I did that for a lot of years, and then got married and stopped because life changed and my routines changed. And then after we had kids and I wanted to get back into a routine of exercise and what a lot of people call self-care, I sort of picked the practice back up. And rather than doing it at home, I started finding that it was a lot easier to do any activity outside of the house. And so I would go to yoga 1 to 3 times a week at our local Y, where our family holds a membership, and found some really great instructors that really clicked. And I think for me, that's made a big difference, is finding instructors, whether it's in person or online, that I feel like I can connect to, and that I can follow their practice and their teaching. And I don't like anything that's too pretentious. And so finding yoga instructors that aren't pretentious has been something that's been important for me in my practice. So that's sort of how I got started. And
Yes, I'm hearing that the clicking is important with whatever you're doing, but then also just to pick one and go. Like Superstore DVDs is not people's normal entry point into yoga.
Sure.
Maybe not. But in terms of like, so for running it at the physical benefit, how does it operate now? Because I can't imagine the busyness, as we're joking about telling your kids to zip the lip, mom's in an interview, like we're doing things. You're online at least twice a week, going live with Facebook and trying to create a sense of worship and prayer and space. Does it have any interaction with the yoga practice and how the rest of your life works, or?
Yeah, well, I was saying before we started that when I initially started practicing yoga, it was not out of a sense of spiritual connection or for meditation as much as it was for stretching and health benefits. But I found as I started practicing, and in particular with a couple of yoga instructors that I've had, that the way in which they invite us into the practice is very much from a very intentional place. And so it started becoming almost impossible to not be drawn into a more meditative state. One of my instructors talks routinely about that it's yoga practice and not yoga perfect. And I've really clung to that as somebody who, I'm not a perfectionist, but I definitely don't like not being good at things, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taken me a long time in my life to do things, especially exercise related, without worrying what other people think of me while I'm doing it, right? And so this idea that we all come to our yoga mats and we're at different abilities, everybody is able to sort of move their body differently, and we're there really for our own selves, and to nurture that part of ourselves has been important for me. And I think it also allows me to go deeper into myself, because you start recognizing, when you start breathing and focusing on your breath, you're not able to think about all the other stuff going on in your life, right? So I'm not able to think about all the things I need to get at the store later, right? Or if I even want to go to the store, because actually going to the store right now is really stressful.
Right.
Right? Or having to think through, well, how do I want to reorganize the worship space so that it is more engaging for people worshiping from home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or what am I going to say in my weekly reflection this week? Because how much more can we talk about confinement? when, when,
Yeah.
when you are lying on the mat and your only task is to be thinking about your breath, or you're standing in tree pose and your only task is to be not falling over, you start noticing things in a new and different way.
Right.
And what I've noticed is that then you start to see shifts in your own body of, oh, I used to not be able to move this way and now I can. Or last
Mm-hmm.
week I was able to move much more than I am this week.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to take on more or less, and it's not necessarily about increased fitness, right? Or flexibility level. Some weeks we're just in a bad place and we're not able to go to a place we were able to go to another week.
Mm-hmm.
And our faith is really like that too, right? Some days I'm really able to see where God is active in the world, and other days it does not matter. I can be in exactly the same physical space, reading the same sacred texts, singing the same
Mm-hmm.
hymns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Practicing the same liturgy, right? Enacting the same liturgy that we do week after week, and just thinking, I'm not getting it, or I'm not seeing it, or I'm not sure what God is up to right here in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I don't think that yoga necessarily is a spiritual practice for everybody, certainly for me it's allowed me to engage my faith more deeply because of the intentionality, because
Mm-hmm.
of moving into a practice with such intentionality that you are thinking about what you're doing, not just now, but noticing the ways that it is different now than how it has been in the past,
Right. Right. Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I've been like got my little book here. I've been jotting down some things here. And if we were going to talk for another hour and a half, I would like, okay, I want to loop back to space and breath and perspective and intentionality and the noticing and I think what I'm hearing, like when I talk to some of the meditation people who have a practice that way, they call they some of them speak of a monkey mind, like there's all these other ideas and things that are going on, and you're breathing and you're like, no, we're just not falling over right now. And then the monkey mind quiets or wanders off, or those thoughts go away with time. Is that kind of what I'm hearing with yoga for you then? So you,
Yeah, oh for sure. And we all do it, right? And it's so easy to get distracted, and then you fall over, right? You lose your balance. And what I appreciate about yoga is the instructors always coming back to this idea of, well, it's okay, just start over, right?
hmm.
You're If you lose your balance, it's not like you roll up your mat and you go home.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
You
oh,
suck, you lose, go home.
right. It's, oh, this happens. This is life. And
Yeah.
so, get your footing back, regroup, start over.
Hmm.
Well, is that not what we talk about in terms of our lives of faith and what it means to enter into the covenant of baptism,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That it is this ongoing thing that um, we might not expect ourselves to screw up, but God knows this, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And so this idea of this daily returning and starting anew,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
From
yeah.
this place of grace, that, you know what, mistakes are going to happen. Some days you're not going to be all there, but you still you go through the pose, right? To the best of your ability that day,
Hmm.
and trust that that you're going to come to some new awareness at some point. Maybe it's
Hmm.
not on the mat, maybe it's later in the day, maybe it's later in the week, but that there is a way in which that you connect
Hmm.
to yourself, that you're always coming back to that place, because we're always leaving that place. So whether it's the monkey brain, or I would call it like the squirrel, right? Like the getting distracted,
Yeah, yeah.
like the dog and the squirrel. which is just so easy for us. And I think a challenge for us too, because we live in this world where everything happens at such a rapid pace, even in the midst of pandemic,
Yeah.
right? Even as
Even in the
we
midst of
are
isolation, you're still at home, but still moving fast, right? Like,
still, there's still all of the things to do, and still it feels like in some way more things to do,
mhm,
right? So a lot of us who are in ministry are creating more online content, so we're not maybe doing all of the things that we would be doing in our church buildings, but we've moved a lot of that online, and or are creating new services for people to attend online, or having different meditative pieces, or creating opportunities for people to connect via Zoom. So there's
mhm,
all these different things that we're doing. If you've got kids at home, then suddenly you're teaching, you're home learning, which
mhm,
if you are not a teacher, I'm not a teacher, I don't know the first thing about teaching kindergarten, and
mhm,
turns out I'm not very good at it. Right? And so you've got this new task of figuring out how to balance
mhm,
working. Oftentimes now a lot of us are working from home primarily if you're not in a essential service, and then keeping your regular household chores, teaching your children. If you've got children who aren't in school, you're going to make sure that they through the through the day.
mhm, mhm.
It's just sort of this never ending task. So having time to come down from all of that to attend to one thing at a time
Mhm.
helps me to be more present the rest of the day.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
consumed by all of the things, but to be able to say, okay, what is the one task I'm doing right now? Right now, I'm talking to my friend Sean about my
Right.
yoga practice, right? Next, I will be making lunch for our son. Then I will return to my work email, right? So I think for me, it has really helped me move from a more scattered place. And it would be easy in this time to say, there's just so much going on. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna do that, right? I'm not
Mhm.
going to do yoga. I'm not going to go for runs. I can take that hour that I would take for those things, and I could use it for something else. But it turns out that I'm a lot more, I don't want to say effective, but I'm a lot more present in the rest of my life
Yeah.
when I when I attend to those practices, when I
Yeah.
take even 15 minutes to practice yoga. Um,
Yeah. And you know what I
and
appreciate about the way you're kind of framing this whole thing is that there is this large spiritual component when you talk about Christianity and covenant of baptism and the connection and who is God. Like there's a theology going on
Mhm.
there, but at the same time, it's also this noticing that when you take the time to build the capacity of noticing, then the rest of life is going to flow a little smoother. Again, not as a to-do list, but as um, a practice. I think practice is right, not a perfection of practice, and this is just how it flows. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I thank you a lot. Thank you so much for
Thank you for
being willing to
having
share with the
me.
Luther College chapel community. Um, I promised in the initial emails I sent out to people for things, I'm like, and we'll promote your online content and stuff. Do you have like a hashtag or a Twitter or something that we should be promoting?
Do I have, I'm so terrible at actually using my Twitter account,
Yeah,
that you can find me at Reedman-Parker, but I'm pretty silent, especially these days.
yeah, yeah.
But all of our church content is available at Messiah Lutheran Church Winnipeg on Facebook,
Okay,
and that's the best place to find me ministry wise.
there we go. Yeah. Well, we could maybe take in one of your weekly prayers. You said you do
Um,
it.
yes, we do Sunday worship at 11 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Winnipeg time. We have Holden evening prayer, which we do jointly in a shared cooperation with Sherwood Park Lutheran Church, where my husband serves. That's Wednesdays at 7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually either on Tuesdays or sometimes later in the week, I check in with people with a reading of one of the Psalms and a prayer for the week.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's busy
Yeah,
times.
busy
Well, maybe
time.
it should be like spiritual practices for extra busy times because isolation times didn't mean boredom in so many ways. It meant busy. So, hello, Oscar.
Hi.
I think this is the perfect way to end an interview. This is awesome. Yeah. Speaking of which, I got to get back to my kids upstairs for their math. So we'll figure it out. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna hit the magical, doodly-doo, doodly-doo special effects that make it amazing. Bye.